Welcome back to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Dahya. I'm so grateful that you're here listening or watching this podcast episode. Would love for you to share this episode with your friends, your family, and your workmates. And if you haven't already done so, please follow or subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes and we can get this podcast out to the wider community. Today, we're delighted to welcome Jack Glennon, a seasoned leader with 20 years of experience across continents and industries like FMCG, tourism, and manufacturing. Having navigated complex corporate landscapes and overcome significant personal health challenges, Jack is now based in Brisbane, Australia, where he leads Glennon Peak Coaching. Through his coaching, Jack helps professionals and leaders redefine their identity, find resilience, and achieve their full potential. Jack shares a commitment to resilience and empowerment, drawing from his own experiences of overcoming difficult childhood and health challenges. Together, we'll explore Jack's extensive journey, his innovative approach to coaching, and the launch of his new venture. Get ready for an enlightening and transformative conversation that promises to inspire and offer actionable insights. Join us as we dive deep into the strategies that help redefine personal and professional identities. Let's welcome Jack Glennon to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you very much for having me. What an introduction.
Always the best. Got to make our guests feel welcome, you know?
Oh, you've certainly done that.
Oh, thank you. Well, Jack, I'm interested. There's a lot in that introduction and which I got from your bio. Could you give us a little brief summary of your kind of like your journey in life, those challenges that you went through, especially the health ones? I believe there was numerous challenges that came along the way.
Yeah, of course. There is a lot to unpack there, so I'll try and keep it snappy and short. I guess the first thing to easily cover off, because you'll pick up from my accent, I'm not necessarily clearly Australian. I grew up in the UK to a single parent household. Parents went through for a pretty rough divorce when I was pretty young. And my mum started a business to support her kids effectively. So I grew up, eating my Rice Krispies at the boardroom table before going to work. So I kind of had business in my blood very early on in many ways. And it's funny how life does 360 circles. Growing up in my teens, I didn't go to uni. Again, I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into a role or into a scope. So I wanted to go out and learn by the school of hard knocks, something I've done pretty much to this day. But I always had an itch for experiencing life and doing something crazy. And that's got different levels. So I did something a bit crazy every year. Ran with bulls in Pamplona. In Spain, I went snorkeling with killer whales in Norway. Like just something to tick a box every year. But it wasn't quite enough. And it took my mum to actually go, and I'm sure she's probably regretting it because I ended up staying here. But it took her to go, look, you need to get out and see the world, go traveling, get out of Europe. So I did. So I left the UK and did a bit of traveling here in Australia. And I met a few guys and worked in Byron Bay in a scuba diving place and learned how to scuba dive and did various courses. And then ended up going around Southeast Asia and had so many incredible experiences there. Definitely stories for another podcast. But went back to the UK and I was there for a grand total of 10 days. And I remember sitting in a pub with all my mates and they were talking about the same things that were relevant when I left. And it was almost like we'd done that. And I was like, no, this is not where I want to be. So I had a house at the time, I had a car, had a girlfriend, and I sold everything. I didn't sell the girlfriend, obviously I left that. But I just went, no. And it was very selfish, but it was something I needed to do. I knew that wasn't where I wanted to be. So I left and took a one-way ticket back to Oz and was determined to stay here. I knew scuba diving was my course. So I did more courses and ended up moving to Cairns and working on the liverboards. And I learned so much during that time. And that was my way to stay, get a visa, etc. I ended up meeting my wife. She was my student because I ended up learning how to teach people. So I was a scuba diving instructor. It's quite cliche. That lifestyle as a scuba dive instructor was amazing, but it has for some a life expectancy in terms of you get tired of it because you're living and it's partying, it's great lifestyle, it's great fun. but you often want a bit of normality, a bit of, oh, I live life at home on land. I can plan things. So I wanted to go and do something different, and I got an opportunity to go into the corporate world and work for a spirit company. And I had an amazing experience throughout my tenure there. I learned a lot, not all good, like anything in life. But during that time, as you mentioned, I had a selection of quite serious health issues. The short version, because wow, it's an ordeal in itself, is that I ended up having three strokes, which the first one, when wasn't actually diagnosed at the time, they didn't think it was a stroke. They didn't know what it was. I was actually told effectively you're fine after the fact, after all sorts of tests that I had, and get on with life. And at that point, I made the mistake, which, one takes things and learns from them, of throwing myself even more into work and going, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. In fact, looking back now, 2 months after my first one, I actually completed Tough Mudder, which anyone's not familiar with Tough Mudder, it's this extreme obstacle course where you push your body to the limit, which is so stupid to do. But for me, it was my way of going, I'm fine, I'm fine. I'm in my early 30s, I'm made of magic and rubber. Um, the second one happened again, unfortunately, when I was in India, in the middle of nowhere. And again, this time I knew what was going on. I was familiar with it. But basically, there was a matter of I need to know what's going on now. So when I got back to Australia, there was more tests. We found out it was three strokes. We still don't know to this day when the third one happened. But I was grateful to have been there at that point, going, I'm still here. I'm still fine. They're called TIAs,
Hmm.
because basically what happens is there's a bleed on your brain. And I've got 3 points, but I'm not left with any lasting major effects, thankfully. My taste buds changed slightly. That was about it. And I had a lisp for a little bit. But I was still here because it could have happened when I was diving, could have happened when I'd climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, for example, which was amazing. But if that happened at those occasions, I'm not here. So we found out the reason why was I actually had a gap in my heart from
Mm.
birth, which was never picked up. So when we're born, we've all got a partition in our heart. And when we're born, this partition is slightly open. And you take your first breath and it goes, mine never did. So for 30 odd years, it was doing that,
Wow.
collecting all sorts of lovely stuff. So, and that therefore clots, causes potential strokes. So, what I had to do was get an amazing device through heart surgery where they basically put a rod through and a fan that opens up on both sides and seals on both sides. So, seals it. Incredible. Um, After I had heart surgery, there was a quite considerate complications because my heart didn't take to it very well. It was this foreign object. It had been, moved around, disrupted, and bruised, and it was very inflamed. And I had various scenarios where my heart went mental, really, really fast, and very rhythmic at the same time. So I had to be rushed to hospital. And what they do in those scenarios is they give you potassium and magnesium through into your bloodstream, to try and slow your heart rate down and try and balance it out. It didn't work for me. So the first time it happened, my heart was actually doing 230 beats a minute, which is more than dangerous. So because these two weren't working, they had to make a call to reset my heart because of the risk of cardiac arrest. Now, to do that, what they have to do is put you out and then defibrillate your heart, which is that zappy thing for anyone that hasn't seen it. Um, when that happened, this was at the start of COVID. So my wife couldn't come in. I was alone. And so I had to very much deal with this myself. I had my mum on the phone to me back in the UK because she was aware of everything leading up to it. And she heard when the nurses ran in and when we're going to have to defib you, we're going to put you out. These are the risks. We can't guarantee you're going to wake up. Da, 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 da. Not a great moment. So I effectively had to say goodbye to my mum on the phone because there's no guarantee you're coming back, which was tough and unbelievably tough for her, feeling probably helpless back in the UK. Um, and then you have a moment of going, okay, this is it. I've got to deal with this mentally. And people ask me to this day, did you feel at peace with dying? Were you ready? Were you scared? Interestingly and weirdly, and I can't really explain it. Talking to my mum, it was fear. It was, oh, this is horrible. The moment I hung up, I'm like, I'm ready. And it wasn't like I'm ready to give up. It was, and I use this metaphor quite a lot. I have one card to play. If I want to wake up, if I want to be here tomorrow, this is the card I've got. So I just started saying in my head and saying out loud, "You're going to wake up. You're going to wake up." But I was completely calm. I was literally going, "Okay, ladies, I'm ready. Let's do it." And also it worked. And this happened over a period of 6 months, lesser severe times. I had I had my heart defib twice. But then, you heal and you have your medications over time, and then you're fine. And to this day, I'm okay, thankfully. Not that I haven't learned a lot, and there's a couple of ticks that I have to manage it.
Mm. Wow, what a journey. And goodness, yourself, your family went through, would have gone through so much.
Yeah.
But you came out the other end, so that's good. And that flap that closes, does that close forever? Does it?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, I'm as likely to have a stroke now as anybody else. I have no more chance or less chance, or I'm not high or lower risk than anybody because that's now sealed. So the cause of it effectively is fine. I do still have, because when you go through something like that, where your body is lets you down effectively, and you're dealing with not trusting your body really for the first time,
Mm.
especially in your early 30s, especially for someone for myself that was quite active. It does a lot to your psyche, but I do, you go through a journey with it. But I do now, if you ever stand up really fast and you feel a bit dizzy, or your body has a bit of a moment, maybe you're a bit too hot. I have a thing now where I pinch my thumbnail into my index finger as a sort of, "Are you okay?" And I'll always have this because I know that if I can feel that, I'm okay. Because
Wow.
when these instances happened, I lost the complete side of my body, left side of my body. I couldn't feel a thing. The worst it got was up to here, where I lost my left side of my tongue. I was speaking with a lisp, as I mentioned before. But I know that if I can feel my thumbnail, I'm okay. But yeah, no, it in theory, physically, absolutely fine, and very, very lucky.
Wow. Well, we're glad that you're here and on this podcast.
Me too.
Yeah. So, Jack, could you walk us through your early years of your career and the pivotal moments that shaped your path?
So many. I'll try and keep it to Australia because I don't think you've got 2 weeks with me. Um, in the scuba dive industry, I learned a lot because again, I mean, I learned how to teach people, and that's such an honor and a privilege because you're giving people experience. But also, the boating industry, it can be quite old school. I'm sure it's probably less so now. But when I joined, wow, you had some old school tough guys. And you're out, I mean, especially on liverboards, you're out at sea and you're stuck with them. So you've got to learn to get along. And it can be rough weather, it can be difficult. A lot of people used to go, "Oh, it's the dream job." I'm like, not always. Sometimes it's really bad weather. Sometimes things go wrong. But I used to work with some really tough old guys that gave me hell, absolute hell. And it was their style of leadership, not one I necessarily agree with, but it was their style. It was old school. And you put up with it or you quit, and it's that simple. And you do it their way, or you quit when you get back to land.
Mm.
So that gave me real resilience and was tough, and I was, hating it for a while. But you face those challenges. Um, going through going through my corporate career, there was a few different pivotal moments. One was my first leadership role, which was my leader left the business, and it wasn't it wasn't a nice way, quite acrimonious on both sides. I don't think I'll ever know the true story on either. Again, it's not my business to be fair, but this was in the midst of me going back and forth to hospital with my effective cardiac issues. It was the Wednesday, and we were on a Teams call, and because this was COVID, and it was announced that he was leaving on the Friday. So my leader was gone. My mentor that I owe so much to, even to this day, I'll always thank him. Gone. 3 days time. Okay. The moment the call hung up, my call rang to offer me the role. Leadership's something I've always done in every single role I've always been in, whether it was hospitality, whether it was manufacturing. I ended up being, senior scuba dive instructor. It's something I've always resonated with and always enjoyed. So it was something I would want to do, but it was very conflicting. I accepted the job on my way to hospital. I remember calling my would-be leader at the time, going, "Thank you. I'd like to accept the job," because you're panting, your heart rate's going mental. But that was a pivotal moment because he was gone on the Friday, and I remember just getting millions of emails from him, just going, "This is all yours," and going, Jesus, where am I going to start? Like he was such a rock. And I was living in Cairns. The rest of the team was down in Southeast Queensland. And it was, here you go. You kind of got to take this on now, and it's yours to make it. And there were some real pivotal moments in that time of trying to build a team from not from scratch because it was there, but it very much fell apart over that year, before I took it on, and a couple of key figures that I learned to get on side, and people, colleagues and people I trusted who were absolute rocks to me. And I made mistakes on the way, absolutely. I tried to protect the team probably too much over time, and I definitely took too much on. Definitely throughout a period, especially with my health, I threw myself more and more into work, which
Mm.
is a common mistake that we all do. My team would all, no matter what team I had throughout my whole sort of nearly 9 years working there, I would be the biggest advocate for work-life balance and go, guys, you've had enough, or just take a break, or it's fine, you're done, go home, look after the kids, no dramas. And they go, yeah, what about you? I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine. And I'm still, and the best example of that was when I was in hospital, was after my heart surgery. And I've still got the photo to this day. I'll share it with you. It was the Thursday, and the next day I was in hospital recovering, wide up. I'm lying there, not looking my best. And most people would be reading a book, watching Netflix, and I'm working. Because I felt it was the safe thing. It was familiar. It was what I could control. Um, and it was what I knew. And also was this trope that I now speak about a lot, which I think, some people are aware of some of it, which is corporations and organizations that talk about family culture. Now, I'll never say for anybody, no, don't work in corporate world, because there's some brilliant jobs and amazing people in the corporate world. What I try and coach is to be corporately savvy and aware of it for your own resilience, and to be prepared for these things. Because when you're talking about family businesses, we talk about people who are, mum and pop delis. I love those. I'm sure you know a few of them, right? They're great. And I think we need more of them. But when that crosses over into the corporate world, it does two things. One, it makes people, and they buy into it, and I did. I mean, I spoke about it, I sold it, I completely hold my hands up to it. You buy into it, therefore you work more than you probably should.
Mm.
Definitely work more than what you're paid to. Let's be honest, that gets talked about quite a lot. The other side of it that doesn't get spoken about is actually when things go wrong.
Mm.
And that's when people have disagreements, people get disciplinaries, people quit, people are fired, or in my case and multiple others early this year, people face redundancies. Your safe place that has become such part of your routine, but that your family doesn't want you anymore.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that was another pivotal moment for me, is facing that and going, okay, I need to redefine, and you mentioned before, my identity and who I am and what's my worth, because it's not associated. And I use a term quite often. I go, fall in love with your job, just don't fall in love with the company you work for. Because the company, the entity doesn't love you back, and that's okay. That's absolutely fine. So there's been a few, yeah, pivotal moments from redundancy itself, from the health through working with old school old dogs and taking a lot of hell.
Yeah.
And just having to, that's sometimes in my case, stubbornness to go, okay, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. Look, I've been in corporate world for 20, some 25, 30 years. And in two, not this week, next week, I'm going to be going through my fourth redundancy in my career.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been through something like 20, 24 restructures.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I can understand exactly where you're coming from. Um, and it doesn't get any easier. Um, but uh,
No.
but just how you handle it is different.
And how
Yeah.
people, it's so dependent on how it's handled in that business.
Yeah.
I actually have, for the people that do it right, who have to deliver the news, I've actually got a lot of empathy and sympathy for them, and respect for people who do it well. Because my God, as much as it's pretty rough being on this side of things, it's not nice doing that. And it's what often gets forgotten is the people who get left behind it as well, going, all right, we've lost our leaders, maybe, or some of our leaders, or some core people, or my best mate, or whoever it might be. And now I've got their work on top, and do I trust these people in charge anymore? That's the other side that never again get spoken about too often, but it's
Yeah,
happening so often, and it's quite critical.
yeah. I've been through this recent scenario where the leadership are secretive, and when you ask a question, you get the "I don't know," "We don't know," and I'm like, how can you, how can you have a strategy when you don't know where you're going? And so anyway,
Yeah.
so Jack, so how did those experiences influence your leadership role style?
Ironically, to time what you're just saying there, taught me that empathy and clear communication is absolutely essential. Uh,
Mm,
Leadership isn't about dictating. It's about listening, learning, and then guiding.
yeah.
The complexities of the corporate world, like, showed me the importance of leading with emotional intelligence. I look to the people that I've learned from over the years, and they all led with a high EQ. Yeah, numbers are vital. Every business needs, cash flow to continue, and they need growth to carry on. Yeah, I get that. That's the nuts and bolts. It's a byproduct. But you get your people right, the business will follow.
Yeah.
So it's about creating an environment where people, individuals, professionals, teams feel supported and valued.
Mm,
And I have increasingly seen these skills get less time in the light over the last couple of years, and not
mm,
just where I work, but just in general and people I speak to. I actually spoke to a friend of mine at the beginning of this financial year, just a month after, sorry, and he said, oh, my leader, my boss, he got me and the other sales guys in the room and talk about this year, because the number we've got is we're never going to hit it, but we're going to give it a good crack. All right, yeah. What did he say? He basically said, our jobs are all on the line for this number. Really? Because that's how are you going to get everybody on side and really look at the problem as a collective if you're putting everyone's backs on the wall and going, if you don't get this number, your job's on the line with
mm,
11 months to go.
mm.
That's again, that's dictatorial.
Yeah.
And I've seen elements of that, and that doesn't end well.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. So let's go back to the personal health challenges you had. So facing those strokes and surgery, it would have been extremely challenging for you and your family. Um, and how did you maintain your motivation and focus during that recovery?
In life or in work or both.
And both in life and work.
As I mentioned before, I can be really stubborn. Um, but it's also about what you can control. And I'm someone who, I talk, control we control. So I would set small, achievable goals. And a great example of this is the evening of the first incident, the first event, if you like, incident of when I was away. I was on the Gold Coast, away for work, and I ended up in hospital that night. No side, it was the first time, and I had a flight home the next day. And I was determined, as I could still not feel anything on my left hand side, I was going home. So I had a nurse or a physio, I can't remember what it was, with me throughout the night doing tests, doing strength tests I remember on my foot and different parts of my left hand body, like squeeze my finger, squeeze my hand, that sort of stuff. And I'd make a bet with her. I'll go, if I can push your hand with my left foot hard enough, do I then gain an hour tomorrow? Because as things stood at the time, I wasn't going to be discharged soon enough to get out to catch my flight to go home.
Mm,
So I did that throughout the whole night, and I took that element back with me. So I wasn't able to drive for legal reasons, for risk for the first couple of weeks. So it was okay, drive. And I set these small achievable goals and reminded myself about the resilience that will take me through. And that built the persistence at the same time. Like I said, I did take on Tough Mudder, which was probably an extreme. But again, it was a test of, is my body okay? After the heart, so we're talking about a year later when we knew what was going on in the surgery, it was a little trickier because it was during COVID. So, I had 6 months of wearing a Fitbit and having to keep my heart within a certain element. So I was testing myself every day. I could barely do quicker than a brisk walk, pretty much. And the day I got my results to go, you're okay, you're fine. Yeah, you can get rid of all the pills and all the drugs, you're fine. If I'm honest, I went out and got really drunk. um, with a load of friends because I hadn't been drinking or having fun for 6 months,
I
which
guess you
again,
needed one after all that.
exactly,
Yeah.
again, it's not the smartest thing to do, but it was my way of going, you're good, and
Mm.
celebrate that you're good and you're fine, and this isn't going to define you. The support of my wife and my mum back in the UK and a couple of key friends, along with my belief stroke stubbornness that I could contribute more, kept me focused. I've reflected more, ironically, in the years down the line. When you have, you face your mortality and you face your body's fallibilities, I guess, you don't necessarily deal with it all in the moment. And I certainly didn't in many ways. It's more you reflect back and go, you worked in hospital, you idiot. What are you doing? So it's these reflections that help you grow when you move forward, and it's a constant journey.
Mm, mm. Wow. Honestly, what a what a journey for you. Let's talk a
Weirdly, I
little bit.
wouldn't. Sorry, Andy. Weirdly, I wouldn't change any of it. Weirdly,
No,
and some
no.
people go, you wish you healthy. I was like, hell no, because it's part of that journey that makes you who you are. From
Yeah,
in the moment,
yeah,
it's horrible. In the moment, it's horrible for everyone. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it's part of who's sitting here in front of you now.
yeah. I mean, look, like when I was born, my mum lost a baby before me, and she lost one every alternate one after me.
Wow.
And I was the only one that survived out of all the ones that had problems. So I
Mm.
was 15 days old. I was 3 months prem, 15 days old. I weighed a pound, and I had a
Wow.
kidney removed at birth. So 53 years later, I'm still functioning on one kidney,
Yeah.
and it
Amazing.
hasn't defined me
No, it doesn't. Right. Yeah,
because
spot on.
to me, I'm just like everyone else, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. And when you start, if you start focusing on that, then
Mm.
that's when you start to, but if you, if you just basically go past it and say, hey, everything's fine. You are who you are.
Yeah.
And then it's all good.
As a point in,
Um,
as a point in time, it's a story that I'm happy to share because it helps show the journey that I've been on to help explain who I am now, and it helps other people as well. In terms of facing mortality, and especially, I think guys, we don't really like to think that we can be broken physically, at least,
mm,
let alone mentally. And yes, we can. But you get broken, you get fixed.
yeah.
And it's not, you're actually left with scars, but scars are there for a
Mm.
reason.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you've started the Glennon Peak coaching.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit around the philosophy of it. Like, what drove you to start this venture, and what's the fundamental philosophy around it and that?
Great question. So, following my redundancy, the first thing I want to do is take time. When and to go and find out who I am, what I am, what's my core, what I want to get out of life from a professional sense, and what gets me up in the morning to go to work and drive. So, I wasn't against asking for help at all, which, I think, again, when you're younger, you probably are. You're like, no, I'll deal with it myself.
Mhm.
So I reached out to a couple of friends. I spoke to my mum quite a bit, and I got their advice of, maybe work out your non-negotiables of what you want a job to be. Work out, do some of these personality tests that define, help define, at your core what you love to do and what you kind of probably avoid doing work-wise.
Mm,
Um, and it all headed towards a direction of guiding, coaching, teaching, developing people. Going back, like I said, to scuba diving instructing, or being in a leadership role. My highlight was, especially in the corporate world, was I created the onboarding for all the sales teams. And I onboarded every person who worked in sales in the business, and I coached them in the field. And that was the best part of the job in many ways. So that gave me fulfillment. I remember I won an award, a leadership award for the business. I can't remember what year it was. Maybe it's 2022. Um, and that wasn't the highlight of my night. The highlight of my night was seeing someone who I onboarded and went through a really tricky time when he first started in the business. And he was awarded the number one salesperson in the business. And, I don't have kids, but I was like a proud parent, going, yes, awesome. That gave me the fizz. So coming out of redundancy, I started to put my coaching on various other platforms as an offer to do. And I met with a few people following because I write on LinkedIn as well, giving advice, passing on knowledge. And they said, "So what's your business?" I'm like, "Well, it's just me." They went, "Oh, okay. Maybe you need to separate that, be you, but also be a business at the same time," which is a great bit of advice because again, it's avoiding me going down the my job is my identity, which I'd previously done. So I had to think for a few weeks and I started to draw out logos and write different names and just try and get a bit creative. It's not necessarily my specialty. But I found a name and went, right, this is what I want to do. And I've always had the mantra, if I'm not going to do it, no one else is. And I'm quite comfortable with that. I'm very self-driven. A friend of mine not long ago said, "You're the busiest unemployed person I know." So after facing these challenges, I recognized that this is something that was my passion and I could really define and make my own and use through my experiences. So, you mentioned what's the sort of influence behind it and the values of the business effectively. And whilst it's online coaching, it's really designed to be bespoke to the individual. I've got some great friends that are business coaches, and they are far more experienced than I am, and incredible at what they do. But I didn't want to do what they do because it's very specific, and it's very 5 step, and they're great. But unfortunately, the industry is filled with 5 steps to guarantee your first $1 million. It's very, ugh, that's just not me. It's not me. I couldn't do it and sleep at night. I'm too me to the core, sometimes to my own detriment. So what I wanted to build was, look, yes, these specialty areas, emotional intelligence, leadership, sales, executive coaching, career, these 5 areas, yeah, this is the main thing I'm going to cover. But I want to offer every individual 30 minutes free with me, where they're just going to tell me their challenge and problem, and I'm just going to listen. And at the end of it, I'm going to go, awesome. This is what I'd recommend we do. And I think it's going to take us a couple of weeks. I would need about a week or two to go away and work on it. And we'd need 2 or 3 sessions over the next couple of weeks or couple of months, whatever it might be, to get to your goal where you need to go.
Mm,
And it's tailored to them and it's bespoke around them because quite often coaching programs can go on and on and on and on and on and cost people so much money as well. And that's more mentoring and that's ongoing. And I do offer open mentoring, but I don't charge for it, if I'm honest. Anyone that does coaching with me, I'm there on the phone for them. That's kind of, again,
mm,
part of the relationship. So, my experiences have taught me that, true leadership's about getting people through their own transformations. So I bring a deep sense of empathy and understanding to the coaching, knowing firsthand what it's like to have lost and feel lost. And I'm very open about the mistakes that I've made, but I can recognize them because I've made them in others and go, it's okay. And it's all right to feel how you're feeling because setbacks are opportunities for growth. So it's really rooted in helping them, again, redefine their identity and building that resilience.
mm. So Jack, what do you think is the most important aspect of redefining one's identity after a setback?
Really good question. Firstly, setbacks don't define you.
No.
Um, we'll and
They're
whether they're
setups, right? They're setups for your comeback.
yeah,
Yeah.
whether they're your fault or not.
No.
Um, it's about finding the courage and find the inner you, if you like, to reframe those experiences as stepping stones to
Mm,
something better or greater or just different. You don't always have to go up to move forward. So sometimes sideways is still a step forward. Letting go of past narratives is, and embracing the idea that change offers us a chance to rebuild is brilliant. So it's a way that we can really see and identify who we truly are.
mm, mm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So what can you share some practical strategies that's worked for your clients?
I'll share one easy one,
Yeah.
and and again it's quite funny because I speak to people and they go, "Oh, I've got this, really out of this world strategy, and let me write it on a board." It looks like some sort of math problem. Um, the strategy should be simple, especially for coaching. I'm a big believer that people who go into coaching, what they want to grow, but they don't want to go to, they don't want homework. They don't want, guys, sure, I've got to call Jack up because we've got an hour session coming up. Oh, this is going to be intense. They've got to look forward to it. It's going to be challenging. I'm not always going to tell them what they want to hear. But one strategy I do is very simple. It's stop, start, continues. What's working and what isn't. And this
Mm,
framework I repeat in so many different assets. I've challenged leaders to use it when they're talking to their teams, because leaders, especially new leaders, they give their teams feedback and they go, look, I think you're doing this well, but this could be better, whatever it might be. But I really want you to focus on this. And then they stop. What they don't do then is go, how am I doing?
mm,
And go, just give me one thing. What do you want me to stop? What do you want me to start that's going to help you? And what do you really like? What am I doing well that's giving you value?
mm,
And what I make a highlight of is the stop often puts people's backups and go, what? I'm getting people to tell me to stop what I'm doing? No, you're giving them an opportunity to be heard, because they could go to you, James, I really want you to stop saying this in our meetings because it's winding me up and I just don't understand why we're doing it. People with no EQ are going to hear he's going to go, he's wanting me to stop doing that. But there's one key thing that person just said to James: I don't understand. So by using this and by being open to it, that leader can go, awesome, mate, I get exactly why you're getting wound up, because you're hearing it from this perspective and it's sounding like this. Let me reframe it for you and explain to you why I need to say this every time we have a meeting. Completely
mm.
different dynamic. Person feels heard and the leader understands that individual a bit more and they both grow. So it's again another learning opportunity. And that stop, start, continue framework, whilst it's simple, and some people use traffic lights or whatever, I'm not here to redefine the world. It doesn't need bloody redefining. It can be just mimicked in so many simple, great ways if you use emotional intelligence the right way.
Yeah, I've used that stop, start, and continue framework before,
Mm,
and it's a commonly used framework in business. So it's a great one.
yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the common challenges your clients face, and how do you help them navigate these?
Right now, quite a common one is around self-doubt,
Mm,
especially after setbacks like redundancy. Um, redundancies can be brutal. As we mentioned before, you question your own value. I often use it as an example that it's a breakup. They don't love me anymore. What did I do wrong? Why don't they want me? That sort of thing. So it's very much a focus in this example to, there's different stages involved. Firstly, allowing that person, encouraging that person to feel it. Feel everything that you think you should be feeling. Because if you don't, if you bury it, it's going to come back later. And it's okay to feel all these things, but voice them, write them down, acknowledge them, be aware of them, and write it out. Next is about shifting that mindset to see it as an opportunity in adversity. Go, okay, maybe that's not the place where I actually should be. Maybe that business isn't, not the business, but maybe the leadership, you know, isn't really where I'm suited anymore. So where am I suited? Where am I going to be happy? So together from that, we can develop clear action plans to build the confidence through the small wins. I'm working with someone who, we both started connecting and she wanted help on out of redundancy going, I want to become a leader because I think that's going to give me more security coming out of redundancies. And we actually went through a path of identifying her strengths and areas that she really not just had to develop, but didn't actually want to develop at the same time because they just didn't give her the fizz. I use that term quite a bit, the excitement, the buzz. And what we identified was she would hate leadership. It was actually not at all what she'd want to do. So the action plan then completely changed, going, okay, let's now work on your non-negotiables. Let's work on what you want to do and what you absolutely want to avoid. So she would go away and we'd work on that. And there would be a clear win of going, brilliant, step forward. So while we're going through the journey, we're also working on the emotional regulation techniques to prevent
mm,
burnout. So making sure that, whilst after redundancy, going, okay, every day, take 1 hour for you. 1 hour away from that working environment. If you're currently doing resumes and working on the sofa, it means you don't go on your sofa. Go for a walk out of your office. Take that 1 hour for you to just do anything. But it's time to be a little bit selfish because it's about regulating those emotions and giving you space to go and rebuild the body and the mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And last year, my third redundancy was last year in June 2023, and now 2 weeks 2 weeks from now is my fourth one. And what you were saying before about feeling rejected and abandoned, I used to feel very much like that. And recently, another member of my team who's been made redundant, she was saying to me and the team, I feel rejected,
Mm.
you know. And it took her a few days to actually, probably about a week, to sit through those emotions and feel through those emotions. And today I was applying for jobs and spent almost the day applying for jobs. And then I went, I'm going to go for a walk. So I walked down to the beach because it's a 10-minute walk to the beach.
Right.
And it was windy as, but I didn't care. I
Oh.
went for a walk and I'm listening to a podcast. I was listening to Rich Roll, I think, and listening to a podcast and just really getting into it. And then feeling whatever is coming, I'm just letting it be there.
Mhm.
And it's important because unfortunately, we've just grown up uh, with we've been grown up told not to feel our emotions,
Mm.
you know, think before you act, and it's like, it's always in the head. And
Mhm.
we need to go back to our heart and
Mm.
feel what our heart's telling us and what our gut's telling us. So, yeah, absolutely agree with you. I do a lot of mindfulness. I have a practice that I do every morning where first thing I do before I even open my eyes, when I just wake up, is when the alpha brain waves are open to the subconscious, I start giving gratitude. I ground myself by visualizing myself going into the center of the earth, and my old self gets burnt off, and then I regenerate and I come back into my body.
Mm.
And then I do this thing called segment intending, where it's intentions, where you go, wouldn't it be amazing if today this happened? Or wouldn't
Yeah.
it be amazing if, you know, I was surprised or delighted by something? And setting those intentions is so
Mm.
important because you're putting that out and then you draw that back towards you. So,
What's brilliant also about that is taking the time to doing all these things. Again, it tails back into your identity.
mm,
My identity isn't my job because I don't have a job right now, and that's okay because I'm going to walk on the beach and listen to a podcast and do things that I enjoy, and I'm still me. And even though I don't have a job, I'm still me, and that's enough. I'm still growing, I'm still developing, I'm still learning, I'm still moving forward. Just because it doesn't mean that that defined me before. It was just a part. It was just part of the journey.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Alrighty. Um, let's go to talk a little bit about your future plan in terms of what's coming up for Glen Peak Coaching. What have you got planned in terms of to expand your reach and evolve your coaching practices?
Great question. So, I mean, I'm continuing to do more podcasting. This is platforms like yours are a fantastic opportunity to, share my journey, but also get the word out there about the business. I think we're very lucky in this age to have these platforms. I'm doing more speaking events more intensely. Again, I've got a couple of those both online. But I want to probably the next step is to develop more structured programs that combines live coaching with the on-demand content. I've got all these ideas, and I'm having to remind myself, whoa, write them down. But it's still very up in the infancy.
Things going right?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
And again, it's just me. So what I'm doing with financial, like any business, you got to put money to make money. So, I've put a certain amount of money in and I'm happy with that. And going, okay, now I need to build it and then get money back in and then I'll reinvest it. So it's again, stop, start a little bit. But, continuing to collaborate with our leaders as well, in the space. So it's the best way to grow is to learn.
Mm, absolutely. Yeah. And just today I had a message on LinkedIn from someone that I connected with recently and listened to an episode around uh, Rivaj Ramjan. He's a content creator and he did this episode with me, I think it was a couple episodes, maybe ago anyway, but he was talking about your self-worth and what you charge. And this person that messaged me said that I listened to this episode and thank you because it's actually helped me, you know, gain that self-worth that I
Mm.
can charge more now for what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, you know. And I remember episode 28, which is all about embracing uncertainty through job losses, restructuring, and life transitions. I shared that with 5 people at my current um, workplace, and all 5 of them came back and said, you know, the way you reframed change has completely given me a new perspective on what change is. So, you know, each one of these episodes is going to reach someone. It's going to
Yeah.
touch someone. It's going to, and my goal is to use this platform as a way of building a partnership, a collective,
Mhm.
where where someone listens to Jack and says, "I really want to connect with Jack,"
Mm.
and they can,
Yeah.
because because you know, once I have my website and everything up and running, I want to be able to have that mechanism where people can actually go, I want to connect with Jack, and they can. So, yeah. So, what are the topics that you're particularly excited to explore in your coaching? I think you named some of them previously,
Yeah,
right?
I think I have. I mean, emotional intelligence is one that I not only lead with, but I talk about a lot. And it's one that's actually, I remember because I'm a big sports fan. I was watching a sports podcast about a month ago, and it's with quite some high level celebrities. And they were talking about, I think, a manager and their team, and they're not, not performing very well. And someone mentioned emotional intelligence, and the whole panel went, "What's that?" I had a light bulb moment going, wow, hang on. I'm talking about this and on that level, people don't know about it. So, that's definitely what I'm sort of championing, I guess, but with the sort of focus areas of leadership, career, sales, and executive businesses, but with a lading of emotional intelligence more than anything else. And that ties into mental health at the same time.
Mm.
It's an area
Well,
that really needs attention.
yeah, I'd love to get you back for more episodes on different topics. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
be
let's
my
do that.
pleasure.
Yeah. All right. I've got one last question before we kick into the quick fire questions,
Cool.
and it's around advice for aspiring leaders.
Yeah.
So based on your extensive experience, what advice would you give someone who's aspiring to be a leader in a leadership role, but facing significant obstacles?
Great question. There's a couple of different bits of advice. First, make sure you want it for the right reasons. Uh, if you want to be a leader because you've got a passion about people and developing people, awesome. If you want to become a leader because you want to grow and you want to win, you want to be a boss. And that's okay. You can't be a boss. Don't try to be a leader. But with someone facing significant obstacles, it's about staying resilient. If this is your true passion and if this is really what you want to do, more power to you. The path to leadership is filled with challenges, but it helps not to necessarily define you. It helps create who you're going to be and what type of leader you're going to be, because there are opportunities for you to grow.
Mm,
Develop emotional intelligence at an early stage.
mm,
Focus on learning, from every experience, good and bad. Be humble in the moment, and recognize that when you get that first leadership role, you're going to make so many mistakes.
mhm,
That's okay. And lean on the experienced people that are around you. I remember one of my earlier leadership roles, one of my team was super experienced. And again, going back to sports, I had this idea in my head. I'm like, okay, I'm the new manager coming into a team that's had a real bad time, had a rough time, had great success, but now going a shake up. I've got this veteran captain still here. I'm going to lean on him. Others, especially new leaders, come in and go, I've got to make sure I pump up my tires and beat him because otherwise he's going to challenge me. And that falls apart every time.
yeah, yeah,
Be humble and be honest.
yeah. I feel that the most important thing a leader must do is serve his people.
Yeah, 100%.
her people. And um, as long as you're using your ego in the right way,
Mm.
and your ego is to empower and build others up
Yep.
rather than break people down, then you're going to be on your way to success. But the minute you start to, as a leader, the ego goes the wrong way, and you start to um, not treat people in a good way, then karma will come and get you. And it's your own karma. It's your karma,
What's your
not,
intent?
yeah,
It's what's your intent?
yeah,
What's your intent behind it? What's your reason?
exactly.
Are you doing this for them or are you doing this for you?
Yeah.
And if you're doing this for you because you're feeling insecure as a leader and you're struggling, you need to go and work on it away and look to your peers or look to outside counsel or your leader, not to your team to put them down to lift you up. And
Yeah.
possibly, if you're doing that, I would question whether you should be in that role anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I've in my time, I've seen a lot of leaders who I would say are managers, because they are managing for now rather than they're not. The leaders will have a vision, and they will put their people ahead of them instead of taking, wanting to be in the limelight type thing. So yeah,
100%.
yeah,
And quite often, especially new leaders, are put into leadership roles because they're best at their job. So
mm,
whether that's in finance or logistics or sales or marketing, they could be the best person in finance, for example, in that team, but have no clue, no disrespect to them, about how to lead people.
mm,
And they're put in a leadership role and gone, okay, what do I do?
yeah,
Uh, and the wrong reason.
yeah. To me, a leader is a guide, just
Mhm.
like a coach
Yeah, that's
is a
why you've been
guide.
up as
Yeah,
coach. Yeah.
yeah. You guide people along. Yeah. Alrighty. So how important is mentorship and the support networks in overcoming professional setbacks?
That's critical. It's absolutely critical. They give you perspective and guidance, as I do now, and other people do to me. They give you the answer you need, not necessarily the answer you want. But they help see beyond the immediate setbacks. We've all, like I said before, in adversity and in troubled times and really difficult times, we do this. And it's natural and there's nothing wrong with it because you're in the moment, you feel it and it's horrible and it's tough. A strong support network keeps you grounded, keeps you motivated to keep seeing forward. And I've had mentors who've massively helped me see opportunities where I saw roadblocks. So it's absolutely, as I said before, absolutely critical.
Mm, cool. What are the first steps someone should take towards redefining their professional identity?
Ooh. First step, I would say, is accepting that change is absolutely inevitable.
Yeah, it's constant.
Yeah, uh, it can suck sometimes, but it is inevitable. It can sometimes be great. So you've got to take the rough with the smooth. It's cliche, but it's true. You've got to see it as a chance for growth when it is a challenge. So reflect on your values and your strengths. Look
Mm,
inward.
mm,
What makes you unique? What makes you stand out? And then take action by setting clear goals and surround yourself with people, as you mentioned before, the great question, with people who support your growth. There's something I saw recently. Be surrounded by people who cheer for you when you're not in the room.
mm,
I love that. So those sort of people who you have that trust in. The process of redefining starts with those small steps. I
mm,
think we're of an age right now, unfortunately, that everyone wants everything now. Instant gratification, instant this. I want to win now. I don't want a career that lasts me 30, 40 years and then I get the wage that I want. I want it today. It doesn't work that way in reality. Some people it does because of various circumstantial situations, but 9.999 times out of 10, it doesn't. It's small steps that require a strong commitment to self-awareness and learning and realizing it's like that. You have good days, you have bad days, and good days are great and you acknowledge them and you're getting growth and you're seeing progress. And, if you're looking for a job, you're getting answers and you have days where it's nothing. And it's recognizing, okay, today's a rough day and tomorrow's, and that's where the support network can come in as well.
and accepting it, right? It's going, okay, it is what it is. And I can either give up or I can just keep getting up. as a champion and then keep going forward.
Yep,
Yeah.
100%.
So we're at the time now where I'm going to ask you five quick fire questions, Jack, and you can answer this in one word or a sentence. And the first one is, how do you define success? And has that definition changed for you over time?
Yes, it has changed. Success used to be about external achievements, titles, and accolades. Now I define success as living authentically, authentically me. I say that quite often. Making a positive impact. I talk about when I speak to people, leaving a legacy, making people's lives or environments better after from being there than after I've gone. And maintaining a balance, which I think of personal and professional life, which I think I'll probably always have a challenge with because that's me.
Cool. Who's been your greatest inspiration and why?
This is going to be a sound a bit weird, but honestly, no one. And that might be a surprising answer.
Maybe yourself?
No, God, that sounds awful.
No.
I was talking to my wife about this recently. I think it was talking about Taylor Swift or someone. Nothing, not got anything about Taylor Swift, but I've never, ever since a young age, I've never got on board of these people are amazing and start. People are human. I've just always had that perspective. I've got so much respect from so many people throughout my life and learned from so many people and be grateful for so many people. But in terms of inspiration, there's no one that's I've ever really picked. I mean, I see someone like Gordon Ramsay, who I enjoy as a character because he often is a character, let's be honest, on TV. I think he's thoroughly entertaining, but my God, I've got respect for his drive and determination and honesty and authenticity. Um, but would I call him an inspiration? Not really, because he's not me.
Mm,
I've often sort of said I live on an island almost because I define my journey and I will learn from people, but inspiration, not really.
no one in your family or
No,
also? No.
my mum probably would come close to that as inspiration, but again, we're very different people in many ways.
Mm,
I mean, I've got again so much, obviously, naturally, I've got so much love for her, but also respect for what she did, especially growing up. Two kids, running a bit, building a business, running a business on her own. you know, Jesus, no thanks. My wife and I, we don't have kids, thankfully, for that reason, maybe. But no, again, it's an inspiration. She's inspired me in
mm,
some ways, but again, I've gone a very different path than her or anyone I know.
mm.
Not
Awesome.
better, not worse, just different.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, what is something that you believe in that other people may disagree with?
I guess I probably touched on it. But for me, being child free by choice is brilliant. And it can be as fulfilling as having kids. And I know there's going to be people who have got kids listening to this now screaming. But for me, it's a difficult conversation. I stand by the belief that, we each have the right to define what fulfillment is for ourselves.
Mm,
And I've got some of my closest friends have kids and I love them to bits, but it's just not something for me. And I wouldn't be able to live, going back to what success is, I wouldn't be able to live authentically as me if I had kids because it wouldn't allow me to live the life that I have. And neither my wife nor I have that gene or unique severe thing inside going, I really want children, just don't have it. But we really want to do other things.
mm,
It
mm.
can be quite controversial.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, if you could go back and give younger Jack a bit of information or advice, what would it be?
It'll be all right, probably. Um, don't be afraid to fail, but it'll be all right.
Mm,
And yeah, because there's been some, like everybody does, some really dark moments in my life, and I've questioned a lot of things and questioned myself, and um, you don't see a way out many times, and you do like that. So it'll be all right, and just get up tomorrow. And it's
mm,
ironically comes full circle to when I was in hospital. Wake up,
mm,
play that one card that you've got.
mm. What is one message that you would like to share with the world?
Resilience isn't about bouncing back to who you were. It's about embracing change and using it as a stepping stone to become someone stronger. Even though I said he wasn't an inspiration, I'm going to steal his quote. Ramsey, I heard something he said recently, which I absolutely love because it's brilliant as a snapshot. And he said, never fear a storm, but get comfortable dancing in the rain. Love that.
Yeah. I mean, you watch a tree, right? A tree gets blown, it gets rained on, all that sort of stuff. It's resilient, but
Mm.
it keeps growing. It's
Yeah.
rooted and it
Yeah.
grounds itself and it just keeps growing.
And you get comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I I've been saying for a while now that I live in my uncomfortable zone permanently because
There's a
for
bit of
me
a balance.
it's just growth. It's just growth after growth after growth. Yeah. Um, right, Jack. It's been amazing having you on this podcast as a guest, and I'd love for you to come back and do some more episodes on other topics like emotional intelligence and so on. Maybe some resilience as well, and go a bit deeper. Um, if people would like to get in touch with you, or they've loved what you've shared, how can they do that?
Great question. Probably a couple of different ways. My LinkedIn is a great place to get to me directly. Obviously, you can DM me on there, but also on my website, which is www.glennonpc.com. I thought glennonpeakcoaching.com would be a bit long, so I shortened it to Glennon PC. And I've also got an Instagram page. As I mentioned, it's just me, so they're not going to get a bot or a team of people answering. They'll get just me, and it'll be, yeah, I'm here to help, here to support.
Cool. We'll put those links into the podcast notes in the
Amazing.
description. Yeah, so people can click on it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jack, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. And if you've been watching this podcast episode and you've been really inspired or you've got some insights out of this, and I encourage you to share this episode with your friends, your family, and your workmates. And if you haven't already done so, please follow this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes and we can get this out to the wider community. I'd also want to say you are loved, you are worthy, champion your life, and champion your greatness. Have an amazing day.